All right, we are back once again with Around the Indoor Football World. I'm joined by Ducon from Arena Football Statement, and then our very special CIF Insiders guest today, Jeff Hilger. If you follow the CIF at all, I'm sure you've seen him post about it because he's on top of everything that's going on in the league. But thank you for joining us today, Jeff. Ducon, thanks for joining us once again. How you guys doing today?
Doing great, Sam.
Doing good.
It's good
Awesome.
to see Jeff.
Definitely. Jeff is easily one of the most tied-in people in the CIF that I know, and I'm sure you feel the same. So definitely going to be a fun conversation to have for sure. So I'm kind of curious, where do you guys want to start? There's a lot to talk about in the CIF right now. Obviously, the Topeka situation. Selena's had quite a bit of turnover. SWK's got quite a bit going on right now. The Beef are still undefeated. Bunch of different topics we can touch on. Where should we start? Should we start with the most divisive topic right now with Topeka?
Might as well get it done and out of the way.
That's a good point. So I don't want to necessarily go into too much detail into what has been rumored to happen or did not happen, but we will talk about the decisions of the league. But basically, I think it was about 2 weeks ago now at this point, where it was announced that the league would be stepping into the ownership group of Topeka and trying to do an investigation based on some claims that had been levied against the team. It has since come out that the entire coaching staff has been let go, that Richard Davis will be overseeing the team throughout the remainder of the season, that he has reached out to Patrick Pimmel, and as well as Kerry Laughlin to join his coaching staff, and that the league has essentially found no wrongdoing from the ownership group or the team itself, and it seemed like they've more or less scapegoated the coaching staff. So I wanted to get you guys' opinions on this, and then, I mean, were you shocked by the decision? Let's start with Jeff.
You froze him, Sam.
Dang.
He's definitely shocked by the decision. Look at that face. He can't even move.
That's awesome. Oh, bummer.
Epic stare that he's got there, though.
I know, right?
He's looking into our soul.
All right, we'll go to Ducon first, and then hopefully we can get Jeff back here. It looks like we're having some connection issues. So, Ducon, were you surprised by the decision?
I was absolutely surprised, and I'm going to be right honest with you. I'm pissed. I'm going to have to decline talking very much on this subject right now, but I will say this. Sometimes the cure is worse than the disease, and I'm just going to leave you with that.
That's very well put. It's very well put. Look, I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying that I'm a huge fan of the Champions Indoor Football League. I wish them nothing but success. We are here talking about this league because we're both fans of it, and working on getting Jeff back right now. We're having some connection issues still. But oh man, it's almost hard to put into words how I truly feel about this. Like, I know that the league has said that no evidence was presented to them. I know it's hard to believe that could be the situation for me personally, just because so much has been said, so much has been shown on social media. So it makes me feel a little taken aback by the fact that they didn't get enough evidence to find any wrongdoing. I personally hope that the league is stepping in and telling the ownership group that they need to make a little bit better decisions in terms of how they treat people. I understand that what they did was maybe not necessarily wrong per se in terms of the rules, but you just got to question the treatment of the people there, and that's
Sure.
all I'm going to leave it at.
Sure.
But ultimately,
sorry,
go ahead. No, you're fine.
Well,
Go ahead.
I do want to say that I too am a huge fan of the CIF and the Topeka Tropics. I definitely you're probably a lot like me in this way, Sam, is you're a fan of the game. And when things happen that affect the longevity and the growth of the game itself, it's hard not to be upset. It's very hard to not be upset. And sometimes what you get is you get people that don't understand football. And what I mean by football is it's a team sport. A receiver doesn't make a good catch unless the quarterback makes a good throw. Quarterback can't make a good throw if he doesn't get his feet set unless the offensive line's blocking for him. The offensive line doesn't get a chance if the center doesn't make a good snap. Every single player is integral to the success of a football team. And in the game of football, every single player, that includes owners, general managers, coaches, every player in the organization is essential to the success of it. And when anybody decides it's about them instead of the team, it's disastrous. And so when I say that I'm upset, I'm seeing things on both sides where individuals have made it about them and not the game and not the purity of the game that I love. And therefore, that's why I'm upset. Now, I don't want to go out with any kind of statements or accusations against any individuals until everything's come out. But there's some, if I might borrow from your sports network, there's some shady stuff going on that really, really, I'm just going to wait to see what happens. But my advice to everybody out there is quit making it about you. Okay. It's a team sport. And you need to care about everybody in your organization. I do agree with what the CIF did. I definitely agree with how the CIF has handled the situation. I have questions about the individual and what that individual did, but we'll wait and see what happens next.
That's completely fair. It looks like we got Jeff back, so we'll bring him back in and get his opinions. Jeff, what is your opinion on the Topeka situation?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same lines of Ducon there. I think it was a very big black eye for the league. I do agree that with them stepping in and sending somebody in there to try to investigate or straighten it out was the right move. However, I just think the transparency of it all is not good. I think you hear so many different stories. You got one Topeka fan who's close to the players, evidently just blasting stuff everywhere, talking real bad about the owner. You don't hear a whole lot of players stepping out and saying a bunch of things publicly. Now, whether they're afraid they'll get fined or it'll jeopardize them from playing or whatever, maybe, I don't know. The whole thing is just very odd and fishy to me. And I do believe that there was probably some mistreatment of the players and stuff. I do believe that probably did happen. Just my opinion. But I think the league just needs to do a better job of trying to prevent this before it gets as bad as this did, if that makes sense.
100%. I think that's a fair assessment. And I think the league has definitely had their eyes opened with this situation, to say the least. But moving on to the next subject at hand, let's talk about the beef. The beef are still undefeated. It looks like they've basically rolled over the few couple teams that I expected to give them a little bit more challenge. Jeff, are you surprised to see Omaha in this position?
No, not really.
That's fair.
They're loaded. They're loaded on their roster. Yeah, from the outside looking in, I've heard people say and question how can they have their roster so loaded, and everything. But their schedule's been favorable to them as well. Not taking anything away from the team. They got a lot of talent on their team. And you look at the last half of their schedule here, very favorable. I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. No.
That's completely fair. Let's get Ducon's thoughts. Are you surprised at all about this?
No, I'm not. I'm not really surprised. I knew they had a very stacked roster, and I think that Rayshon Kaiser's just a flat-out genius, especially defensively. I remember watching him play, and just his IQ as a player was incredibly good, and just to see it transition as a coach, and when you see his time that he had with the Massachusetts Pirates, him and Bones Bagante kind of took over that championship team, and the Massachusetts Pirates defense that year was just insanely good. And I kind of thought that would kind of transition into the Beef. And so far it showed. What has been surprising me about the Beef is how good their offense is too. I did not expect that. And that's the part that is surprising. Now they've, when they were in Salina, Salina kind of figured them out a little bit. They kind of held them at bay. As far as their offense goes. And if it wasn't for Paul Ortiz being a great kicker, Salina probably very well could have won that game. And then we wouldn't be having this discussion about the Beef being undefeated. But I think that if anybody could beat the Beef, it would be Coach O. I think he just sometimes has their number. But right now it just doesn't look like anybody can hardly touch him. Maybe Sioux City.
That's going to be an
I think
interesting
Sioux City
for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of
that'll be
matchups,
their first loss.
Okay, Jeff has spoken, man.
I've spoken. Mark it down.
Write it down on the calendar right now. Now I'm kind of curious about, speaking of which, this upcoming game. We've got Gillette and Sioux City. Brett Funky was talking about it in the chat last night on the IFL game. He's very excited. He expects it to be a huge crowd, super loud out there. So let's get your guys' thoughts on this game. I mean, Jeff, what do you think about the Sioux City Gillette game? Who ends up winning this game?
I'm actually looking forward to watching that game. You can't count Sioux City out, man. Irv, he's going for that big 100th win. And he's got, I think Sioux City's got this one by 2 scores.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. That'll be a fun game to watch. Ducon, what do you think on this game?
Man, I'm excited for it. I call it the Sioux City Revenge Tour. I watched their earlier matchup in Gillette, and Gillette played an outstanding game, but I remember 2 key plays that could have actually won that for Sioux City, and it was 2 interceptions that Dejon Emery could have had that fell right in his hands that could have changed the whole course of that game, and we'd be talking about Sioux City being undefeated right now with the Beef if that was turned out any different. But I'm really excited for it. I see it as a defensive slugfest. I don't think you have a better defensive line in the league except for Sioux City's. Those guys are insane. You talk about the Jalen Jeffersons and Arthur Andersons on Gillette. I don't think they're going to have near the success they've had this year because of that defensive line, and I don't think Mike Pena is going to have that much time to throw the ball. Therefore, I do see, I won't say 2 scores like Jeff. He's pretty bold. I say it's going to be a tight game. I'll say 2 points, Sioux City.
All right. That's fair. That's fair. So obviously we kind of seen 4 teams separate themselves this season. We already talked about 3 of them just now. The 4th is Salina. Salina has seemingly had a lot of turnover in the past couple weeks, despite the fact that they're 5-2. What do you guys attribute this to? I mean, let's go to Jeff first. Do you think they're feeling the pressure right now?
Oh, I think there's definitely some pressure there. They've had a lot of injuries. And Coach O's had a turnover on his roster. He's got a lot of new guys. There's been a lot of rookies come through, so there's been some growing pains. You also look at like last year. Their first half of the season started off pretty rocky too, but you know, Mr. Hall of Fame head coach O'Neal, my man, um, he knows what he's doing. He's going to get them turned around, and they're going to make a hell of a run here at the playoffs. You can't count him out. He's on a mission, and he's going to find the right combination. They've had some issues with quarterbacks. They've gone through several quarterbacks here, and now with Ed Crouch in, I think makes a big game changer for their offense right now. That's probably one of the biggest, I think, improvements you're going to see for that team right there.
I would completely agree. Ducon, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this situation as well. Are you encouraged by what they've done, or are you just have faith in Coach O?
I think you nailed it on the head. I think Jeff mentioned some really good things too. I do have faith in Coach O. I've been confused by some of the moves, but I know that he knows what he's doing. And early in the season, their offense was insanely good, but their defense was so suspect. It just didn't look like a Salina Liberty defense. It didn't look like a Coach O defense. And so defensively, I understand the moves very much. And Jeff mentioned it, the word playoffs. I think Coach O just knows that, the playoffs are coming, and he's just gearing up for it, knowing that the three teams ahead of him are just juggernauts in the league, and that they've got to be able to keep up. And so, yeah, he's looking at it and saying, okay, I like these guys, but how would they do in the playoffs? I just don't see it. I've got to get some more personnel that can really try to help us repeat a championship here, because we've got some really, really tough defenses ahead of us.
Absolutely. So SWK has actually been the beneficiary of some of these moves. They were able to bring in Kevin Simmons, one of my personal favorites in the league. One of those guys that I describe him as a spark plug, because he's so energetic and such a good person that his energy and his motivation is infectious for other players. So I think he's going to be a great addition for Southwest Kansas. Jeff, what are your thoughts on that move? And then what are your thoughts on this weekend's game?
I'm excited about having Kevin. He's a good kick returner. We've been hit with some injury bugs. I know Zuri's banged up pretty good, so he's usually our two on kickoffs returns. So Kevin can step in there and bring some excitement to that. And then with Kevin on defense, our defense is actually pretty darn good. We've just been bit by the deep ball several times, and I think he can step in and really help us out in that situation now. As far as the game goes against Billings, to be honest with you, I think this is going to be another one of those that I think it's going to be a very close game. Billings has got some stuff they've been going through as well. They haven't been playing up to their expectations. They've had a slew of changes as well. And I do think our defense is going to carry us in this game. I still got a few questions on our offense, but it's gotten a lot better over the last few games here. But I think defense is going to be the key in this game, and I think it's going to be about turnovers, and I think our defense is going to come through. Of course, I'm being biased, right? But still.
That's okay. We accept bias here. We know you're a Southwest Kansas fan. Ducon, what are your thoughts on this upcoming game, as well as the move to acquire Kevin Simmons?
Yeah, I'm really excited for it, and I think the acquisition of Kevin Simmons was a very much needed acquisition for Southwest Kansas Storm, especially with the news that Marquise Robinson is hurt out the 4 to 6 weeks. That's a huge blow, but it basically Southwest Kansas Storm's defense has looked really good the last couple of weeks. It's been incredibly good. The offense has always been suspect, and that's because earlier, I was joking with Jeff. What are you guys feeding quarterbacks down there that's making them get hurt every week and out for the season? I don't know what the diet is in Dodge, but that's where quarterbacks go to die. And I feel bad for them. I really do. That's the question mark on this game for me is the quarterback play for Southwest Kansas. I agree with Jeff. I see it as a defensive slugfest. We saw that Billings has signed Lorenz Stefan, but because of the refuse to report thing that was stamped on him, he had to sit 2 games, so he's not playing. I'm guessing they're just going to go with Jamario Benson. And he's good. He's good. I don't think he's, beat up on Southwest Kansas Storm defense good, but he's good. And it may be a low scoring slugfest. And Jeff mentions turnovers, and I think he's right. I think the turnovers is what's going to determine the outcome of this game.
Absolutely. I would agree. I mean, it's definitely going to be one of those games where it could go either way, and the turnovers are probably going to decide the game for sure.
I think you're going to see it's going to be a big game, a rushing game. It's going to be a battle of the running backs and the running quarterbacks, I think, too. I think it's going to be run heavy on both sides.
Absolutely. Yeah. Real quick question, Jeff, and then we'll move on to the last subject. But who is starting at quarterback for SWK this week?
Hollins.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Was not expecting that.
Josh Hollins is starting. He got a little dinged up, but I guess he's healthy and ready to go. And he's had a good full week of practice under his belt, build that chemistry with his team. So excited to see, we're not used to having the same quarterback 2 weeks in a row.
That's what I'm saying.
So I'm hoping that we kind of see a trend here, and let's go for 3, guys.
Very nice. Very nice. So my last question for you guys for this segment is when do we see Topeka and Rapid City get their first victories? Is it next week when they come back from the bye? Do they not get a victory this season? What are your thoughts, Jeff?
Man, I don't know, man. That's a tough question. Honestly, with the way things are right now and so many unknowns, I wish they both would win a game. I hate to see that big goose egg. All right, but I don't know if either one's going to be able to do it, to be honest with you.
That's fair. I mean, as of right now, both of them have extreme upheaval on the roster, and then both of them have their off-field issues as well. Ducon, when do you see either one of these teams getting their first victory?
I think the release of the coaching staff to Topeka was a huge blow. They were right on the verge of getting their first franchise win. I think that was just a bad deal, bad move. I'm gutted for that team and the fan base because it just makes it seem like now they won't get a win this year. I hope they do. I hope they pull it off. I think that their last 2 home games is against Sam's Billings Outlaws and Jeff's Southwest Kansas Storm. So I hate to say it, but I'm actually cheering that one of your teams loses to them so they can. But my question is how come Rapid City and Topeka don't play each other? Seems like one of them ought to get a win from the other one.
That's a good point.
But Rapid
Very good
City
point.
Looks bad. I feel bad for Rapid City too. I'd love to see them get a win. I just don't see them getting it anywhere.
I would agree. It's going to be interesting to watch. I hate to say it, but I don't really have faith in either team. I did have some faith in Topeka before they let go of Lorenz. Donovan's worked great, don't get me wrong, but There's just so much going on with that franchise. It's going to be really hard to right the ship, even with that
Well,
all-star staff.
that's the other thing. Who's Topeka got his quarterback now? Word has it Donovan tore his Achilles last week.
Well, I believe, don't quote me on this. I think Dylan Van Boxel is still there as well. So, he's
That's right.
decent, but again, it's still his first season of indoor football. I know
Yep.
there's a couple different players reaching out to the team now to try and get in as that backup, including one that's been in the league prior to this. So hopefully they bring in another quarterback before this weekend if Donovan truly is hurt. But Jeff, thank you so much for your time this morning, man. It's been a pleasure speaking with you as always. We really
Yep.
appreciate your knowledge and your expertise on the CIF. There truly is no one that knows more than you do.
It's true.
I'm not trying to inflate your ego, man, but
Nah.
you know everything there is to know about this league. So it's definitely love having you on, and love having you as a dare I call you a friend. So thank you for everything you do for me.
Likewise. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
No
Thanks,
problem.
Jeff.
Have a great rest
Appreciate
of your day.
See ya.
See ya.
All right, so we're going to welcome on our next guest, and it looks like there's a lot of Duke City Gladiator love in the house today. So here's my guy, Omar, from the Hardware Podcast. How's it going today, Omar?
It's going great. Glad to be on. Thank you, Sam. And thanks Read a Football Statement for also being a huge Gladiators fan. I'm going to a game in a couple weeks, so I'm pretty excited.
Very nice, very nice. Which game are you going to?
Cool. Nice to meet you, Omar.
I don't know who they're playing. It's the May 13th game. I'm going to be in town for Mother's Day and my sister's graduation, so I convinced my mom, like, hey, please can we go to the game? Because we live 10 minutes away from the arena. Or, sorry, not we. My mom was 10 minutes away from the arena.
Gotcha.
Nice.
That's awesome. Quite the Mother's Day gift.
Yeah, no, she's into it. She'll talk to just because I played football in high school. She'll it's like, oh, like the Gladiators, she'll bring up the Gladiators, like it's not me, So it's definitely
awesome.
great.
That's awesome. I'm sure if Gina's listening, she loves to hear that. She's really big into the fans, so that was a big reason why I always kind of resonated with them. So. Absolutely. We got a lot to talk about with Duke City in particular. So you guys wearing the Duke City gear makes a lot of sense today. Obviously, the big news at hand is that humongous trade that went down this past weekend. And then that is, of course, the one that shook up the entire league, shipping 3 different quarterbacks to 2 different teams ultimately. And then we saw more moves after the fact. But long story short, DC traded with San Diego. Nate Davis is headed to the strike force. DC got in return Aaron Aiken, Demry Croft, and defensive end Jeremiah Kane. So, Omar, I know we've talked a lot off camera. What are your thoughts on the trade? Did it shock you when you saw that Nate Davis was gone?
Yeah, it definitely did shock me a bit. But also maybe thinking retrospect, where the franchise went wrong, because at the end of the 2021 season, there was a choice to be made. Ramon Atkins won an IFL Rookie of the Year, had a great year, and honestly, I think he brought sort of a local fan favorite energy, being from New Mexico Highlands. Being this is the only pro football team in the state of New Mexico, and I overheard one lady say that she made the drive 3 hours north to just to watch the Gladiators play. So he brought that fan favorite aspect. But he was also young, and that's the thing too. It's a choice is to be made. And of course, with Nate Davis coming back, they chose to stick with Nate Davis. And you can't blame them really for that. But you couldn't go wrong with either one. But now I guess hindsight's 2020. Atkins definitely was the better choice. But I think I am shocked, but I think it definitely sends the Gladiators into rebuild mode. And I think just joking around with my mom, I'm always like, you know what, I don't want to go. I don't want to go and watch the Rattlers play, the Rattlers game, because they always beat us. I don't think I've ever seen the Gladiators beat the Rattlers in person. And sure enough, the first meeting of the year, the Rattlers beat the Gladiators. I feel like that was symbolic of maybe a time to hit the rebuild mode button for the Gladiators. So that's just my thoughts on the trade.
That's a pretty solid assessment. In fact, I would go out on a limb that's to say that Rattlers game was a huge motivation to this trade. That Kevin guy rivalry is for real. It's not a joke. So definitely Gina being the woman that I'm speaking about, the owner of Duke City, she really wants to beat Arizona at some point. So she's going to find a way one way or another. Ducon, what were your thoughts on this trade? Did it shock you at all, or was it something you had seen coming?
No, I had seen it coming about 4 weeks before it happened. And honestly, my thoughts on it is I think it's good for Duke City. I think it's good for San Diego, and I think it's good for the league. I really do. I actually really agree with Omar's assessment that I think Duke City would really wish they would have held on to Ramon Atkins instead of letting Nate Davis come back and take over that position. But basically, Nate Davis has been there for a while, and I kind of joke that Gino has a quota of firing 3 coaches a year. It's just a joke. But the reason why the coaches have been let go has been in favor of Nate Davis. Because it was one or the other. And when you watch the body language of Nate on the field, especially against Arizona, he's a pretty fiery individual. And I guess from the way that it looks anyway, it looks like that they were ready to move on from him so the coaches could do what they could do with a different quarterback. And to me, it just looks like that maybe this was let's stop firing coaches and let's just trade our quarterback away and start something fresh. And the reason why I think it's good for the team is I think that it will help them to gel as a team more. It may not look that way in these first few games, but as playoff time comes, I can see that with the signing of Charles McCollum, that Duke City's going to start to gel a little bit better. And they're definitely going to be a very viable foe in the West. I think they slip into the playoffs still and try to make a run. And I think you nailed it, Sam. I think Gina and Fred both are sick and tired of losing to Arizona. They're going to do everything they can to not lose to Arizona again.
Yeah, I may or may not have that on really good authority that she really wants to beat them. But to be fair, I completely agree with your assessment, and I'm glad you said it the way you did, because I think this is a win-win for both teams, and it's not often that you can say that about a trade that of this magnitude. You don't often see 3 quarterbacks change teams in one move. So I thought it was a good move on both sides because, first of all, I'm a huge fan of Demery Croft, which we might ultimately see him leave Duke City with everything going on now. I assume somebody's going to be an odd man out there. They're not going to carry Andre Sale, Aaron Aiken, Demery Croft, and Charles McCollum. It's just not going to happen. So somebody's going to end up leaving. From a roster building perspective, in my thought process, and obviously Omar's, because he wrote an article about it recently, Aaron Aiken makes a little bit more sense to bring in and keep there as the backup because he's extremely mobile. He can play other positions, so he's a little bit more valuable. And then as far as Nate Davis, I think he's going to bring some stability to San Diego that they haven't previously had. And they're kind of going on a run all of a sudden. They got a very nice victory last week. I really think that Nate Davis is going to come in. He's going to be looking hot because he definitely has a chip on his shoulder more than ever before now. And it's going to be very interesting to watch San Diego in the West as well now. So I think moves like this shake up the league, but in a good way. Fans have been talking about this nonstop since it's gone down. Every chat, doesn't matter if it's a San Diego game or a Duke City game or a game that has no teams involved in it, people are talking about this move. So it's awesome to see. That's what the IFL kind of needed. And I don't know that was a motivation here, but definitely awesome to see that everybody's talking about the team. But we touched on it briefly. Charles McCollum is now in DC as well. So that brings them their kind of veteran starter, I assume. So Omar, how do you think that changes the quarterback room for Duke City?
Yeah, so like you said, I did not know that Andre Sale was still rostered, honestly. So it's like a wealth of options, but of course with like a small roster size, like 4 quarterbacks is very impractical with the roster size of the IFL. I do think McCollum helps a lot, but I think you'll end up with the situation this next week if either Croft or whatever quarterbacks to keep, whatever quarterback comes out on the first drive this next week, you'll get a situation like San Diego where like Rudy Johnson played really well. And of course, there's Nate Davis. Like you just traded for Nate Davis, but here Rudy Johnson is throwing 4 touchdowns, no picks this last week. So it's just like, what do you do? So I feel like maybe Aiken performs well running the ball. Maybe Croft has a good game pass, and they do the 2 quarterback system, or whoever, or even Sale if Sale gets in, and you're just like, okay, we have a solid quarterback performance this past week. What do we do with McCollum? Do we start it? Do we ride the hot hand? So I think it just all depends on this next week. If there's just if anything like what happened what happened last week against Vegas, like 19 passing yards happens, then McCollum will be welcomed open arms. But if not, then kind of got a bit of a quarterback controversy.
I would agree. Ducon, how do you think Charles McCollum kind of changes this whole situation following the trade?
Well, he is the IFL leader all time. He's got a wealth of experience in the indoor game. I think that his experience is going to help on a methodical level a lot the offense for Duke City. A lot of people say he's getting old and slow and stuff like that, but his experience is really, really good, and he's mobile enough still. Plus, I visited with him a few times. He's a great guy. I definitely see him working well in this system, and I have to applaud Duke City's management because they treat their guys well, and I think that's going to help a lot too. Like I said earlier, I think that it may be bumpy these first couple games, and it may look like that Duke City's at the bottom of the Western Conference and going to miss out. But I see after 2 or 3 games, they're going to start gelling, and I think they make a really, really good run and become a juggernaut in the league.
I love that thought process because I'm very, very similar thoughts from me as well. I'm a big fan of Duke City. I'm a big fan of how they do things there. I think they have a tremendous amount of talent. If you didn't watch this past game and watch that rushing attack, go back and watch that game because Tim Whitfield he has a fire lit underneath him after being released by San Diego and ending up in Duke City. So he played a really good game. He didn't get as many touches as I expected, but I expect that's going to change going forward, especially with McCollum there. You're going to want to protect him, make sure that run game is balancing out that offense and giving him time to throw. But moving on to the next topic at hand, Frisco is still undefeated. They look nearly unblemished. TJ Edwards has thrown 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's run for several more. He has basically kept this team afloat no matter what is thrown their way. Omar, do you see anybody beating Frisco this season?
So I think I think Quad City definitely is a candidate. Like they look really good so far this year. I know EJ Hilliard's throwing the ball really well out there in Quad City. I also think I also want to say that Massachusetts also is a good candidate just because Massachusetts seemingly has I don't know what the payrolls are in the league, but they always have top end talent too. So I feel like in the East, I think Massachusetts, like they may not look great right now at 3-2, but they have the wealth of talent. Like they somehow were able to get Cardell Jones, and of course we all know like how that panned out. But that's just something I think of, like just like the wealth of talent that exists in Worcester, and of course like that's my second favorite team because I lived in Worcester for 10 years, so. By default, my favorite Eastern team, so maybe I'm a little biased, but yeah, those are the 2 teams for me. As for like the rest of the division, it just looks weak, of course, with like Iowa at 0-5, and then Tulsa being an expansion franchise whose only win is over Iowa, and then Green Bay and Sioux Falls. I think they're kind of not on that level with Frisco.
That's definitely a great assessment. Yeah, man, that definitely Quad City's a great pick for sure. It'll be interesting to see if they can compete. Man, yeah, it definitely looks like a fairly decided East Division compared to the West. The West is still very wide open. Ducon, what are your thoughts on Frisco? Do you think anybody beats them anytime soon, or are they going to roll straight to a playoff appearance once again?
Both. Is it okay to answer both?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think someone's going to beat them soon, and I think they also roll to a great playoff position. I think Omar touched on it. They haven't locked up the East. Quad City and Massachusetts are both very good teams in the East. And between the three of them, I think they're all going to be vying for that number one seed the whole season. But looking at Duke City's schedule, I interviewed Billy back earlier this season, and he was a little disgruntled by the schedule making gods because of how much Frisco has to play the big teams in the league. But we got May 20th, they're at Bay Area, cross conference game, and we got June 3rd, they're at Massachusetts. Then June 17th, they're at Northern Arizona. June 24th, Bay Area comes to town. So it's a cross conference. They're playing Bay Area twice. And those four I kind of highlight as games they may struggle with a little bit. But you mentioned something earlier, Sam, that has been the difference for Frisco, and that is TJ Edwards taking care of the ball. Wow, what a difference it makes when a quarterback goes 5 straight games and doesn't throw an interception. That's how they're able to beat Arizona by 2 scores and Mass by 3 scores. But those were both home games, and they're going to have to travel quite a distance to go to Bay Area and quite a distance to go to Mass. And it's yet to be seen how well they travel that far.
Absolutely. That's a fair assessment for sure. Frisco last year, I believe, was 15-3 by the end of the season, 15-4 after the playoff game. So to see them find regular season success, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who watched the league last year. TJ Edwards was diligently working on his craft, trying to be better as a passer because he knows he's an electric athlete and he needs to couple that with this passing element of his game. He actually worked with the Generals quarterback coach, Zarek Rollins. So he's definitely seems like he's improved. I like what you said, Omar, about Massachusetts. Massachusetts is probably the best team outside of Frisco talent-wise, especially after last night's game. That game by Jimmy Robinson was unbelievable. Man, I became a fan really quickly after watching him a couple times last night, just break big, long runs that you don't normally see. Then Anthony Russo, former XFL player, he's playing well. They just signed former Philadelphia Stars defensive tackle Antoine Owens. So these guys are like on the cutting edge of bringing in borderline outdoor talent and bringing them in and playing well at that. Anthony Russo, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 4 games. First time he's ever played indoor football. So, it's encouraging to see in Massachusetts. I think they're a solid team, but Frisco's got some magic with them right now. So it'll be interesting to see if they can make it through the season undefeated. I don't know if they will, but it's going to be interesting for sure. And I like what you said about Rudy Johnson's performance. Speaking of which, I did not get a chance to say that. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about and ask if you've done it yet, because I have not had an opportunity, but what are your thoughts on betting being incorporated into the IFL? It's been a long time. Pardon me if I'm incorrect about this. I believe the AFL had betting as well, but it's been a long time since this has been available in indoor football. So it's kind of changed the scope of the game. I know people who are betting on games that didn't previously watch the league. So that's kind of what we were after. So Omar, what are your thoughts on the betting aspect adding to the IFL, and how do you think it affects the league going forward?
So for me, I've placed a few bets on college football before. That's really the only sport I really bet on is college football. But seeing it from a fan perspective, like seeing I think the first time I saw it was like a couple weeks ago against Tulsa, and seeing like the line at 2 touchdowns. I'm like, oh man, I'm like, we'll cover that easily. And then like I'm watching the game, and like I'm kind of like wondering, I'm like, okay, like are we gonna cover? Like are we as good as the odds makers say? So from a fan perspective, like it definitely it brings kind of like a point of pride, like, hey, like can we cover the spread? Are we better than what the odds makers say? And definitely from a degenerate perspective, I say that lovingly, as a joke. If it moves, you can bet on it, right? So I think it's definitely great for a lot of people in the league, especially like having a team in Vegas too, of course. With I think right now with the major sports going on, I'm not sure if minor league baseball has a strong like betting system, but you have the minor league baseball season going on right now. You got regular baseball, but just like having a local team to bet on, it's huge in Vegas. But I think it's just good all around, honestly. Just and especially like with the graphic they post every week with each game and the spreads, it makes you do some research into the teams. Like if you are a bettor, makes you learn about the players and makes you just learn about, and then you come across guys like Anthony Russo, or like if you're a huge college football bettor, you remember his career from Temple. Like I know I was thrilled to see Anthony Russo on a roster in the IFL. I just wish he was in the Western Conference, because I would just love to see him play in person. Just that FBS talent. But I think it's just good for the league all around, just in so many aspects.
I would completely agree, and I would question if that TV deal still happens if they didn't have betting involved. Omar, do you have any thoughts on that?
That's an interesting perspective, honestly. So we know, I guess, I don't really know how much CBS incorporates betting into their broadcast, because they don't have a spring football property like the USFL. Like the USFL isn't really, I mean, I think they do incorporate some betting. Like it's not on the score bug, but I think they do mention it at some point. But it's not as big as the XFL. Like ESPN and the XFL are obviously like the hugest beneficiaries of that sort of betting culture. So I think if you say that, and CBS does sort of incorporate it into the broadcast, then I think you're definitely right. But I think that just remains to be seen.
Absolutely. Ducon, what are your thoughts on this? And do you think the TV deal had anything to do with the betting aspect?
Well, first of all, I agree with everything Omar said. I think I think you're very fluent in the way that you speak. I love it. And you're a good analyst. And
Thank you.
Great thought, Sam. Great thought. Honestly, I didn't think of that at all, that the CBS deal could have been largely due. I think it's a great point that you make there. As far as the betting goes, honestly, when you speak in terms of commerce, this was a huge move for the IFL. I think you mentioned it. There's people that are generating an interest in the IFL that didn't previously have it because of the betting aspect. Betting is something I have never done. It's something I will never do. But commerce-wise, I'm grateful to see that there's more fans coming in, that a potential TV deal happened because of it, and I just think it's huge for the league. I'm excited to see where it takes them.
100% agree with that. I love what Omar said, that CBS Sports currently does not have a spring football product. That's very key here, very key, because they're falling behind when it comes to these other big networks. NBC's got USFL, you got ABC has XFL, ESPN has XFL, and then Fox has USFL. So CBS is kind of left out of the mix there. So maybe we do see a bigger partnership with the IFL going forward. And that would give them a very unique product that is completely different from the USFL, completely different from the XFL, might garner a different group of fans. And I think that these networks are realizing more than ever before there is a desire, a craving for spring football. It just needs to be presented in the right way at the right times, so it's not left to compete with all these different things, whether it's March Madness or NBA playoffs or NHL playoffs or whatever it is. It's creative scheduling is going to be one of the things that's going to have to take place. But I honestly think that this is good for all football players going forward. More money in the IFL means bigger deals for players. Maybe we see a higher level of talent in the IFL, and then ultimately it's better off for the fans as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how betting and this TV deal affects the IFL going forward. Omar, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate you coming on to talk IFL. You definitely know what you're talking about. I knew that you were the perfect person to come on and talk about this Duke City trade. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And then just so everybody has a chance to go check it out, what is your podcast and where can we find it?
Oh yeah, I thought you were talking to Ducon. But me, so you can find my podcast at Hardware Pod on YouTube. I think there's a space in between Hardware and Pod. On Twitter, we don't have a Twitter, but we do have an Instagram and TikTok. Hardware Pod. We just post we just see what the trends are and follow it, but like put a college football twist on it, whether it just be memes or commentary. So it's all the socials are Hardware Pod. But yeah, thank you, Sam, for just having me on. I just appreciate the discussion, Sam. Is also as well, Ducon. I appreciate the discussion, and it's just great seeing another Duke City Gladiators fan out in the wild. I sometimes I think I'm like the loudest Duke City Gladiators fan on social media, but obviously that's not true.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Omar. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
We have one more guest joining us. Also, I did not get a chance to say this during the segment, but if you are an IFL fan and you want to win some gear from your favorite team, hit that subscribe button now at 1,000 subscribers. As long as we hit that number before the IFL championship, which is still a couple months away, we will be giving one lucky subscriber some gear to their favorite IFL team. So hopefully we can do that to support the IFL, support an IFL team, and get you some free gear. So Omar, once again, thank you so much, man. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy all the football coming at us this weekend.
Yeah.
Thank you. Same to you guys too. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right. So this next guest is arguably a celebrity in the arena football coverage world. He is at one half of the team that creates the Inside the Walls podcast, and his name is Jim. Jim, how you doing this morning?
It's too early in the morning.
I completely understand that for sure. I did not want to mispronounce your last name. What is your last name for me?
Meunier.
There we go. Okay, Meunier. I'm going to have to remember that now. So there is so much to unpack in the NAL right now. Between the changes in Albany, San Antonio is currently still undefeated, the attendance issues in Fayetteville. So I wanted to start with the Albany changes. What are your thoughts on the Albany situation, top to bottom? I mean, we've seen so much upheaval since the season began and Antonio Brown became involved. How much do you attribute that to him? And just honestly, what are your thoughts on the whole situation overall?
It's more of a win or lose situation or no win situation in Albany. You're gonna have you're gonna have a group of fans that love the idea. You're gonna have a group of fans that don't like the idea. It's because Antonio Brown's such a polarizing figure, from his history in the NFL to TMZ to starring the Carrie Underwood Sunday Night Football theme song. He is from Albany. His dad's a legend in Albany, so the old ownership brought him in to help stabilize the organization, and Antonio Brown decided to take over. For overall, in my opinion, it's you have a figure like him taking over an organization that's last 3 years, 4 years have dominated arena football. Period. It puts more of an image on Albany than the product on the field. One thing I don't like that I see a lot of, Ducon will remember this from the old AFL days with, John Elway, Bon Jovi, all the big time superstars. They took all the light from the game. It's like, oh, this is my team, this is me, and they basically were promoting themselves and not the organization. I see some of that happening in Albany. Like I've seen this before. It's what killed the AFL back in the day. Is these big ego-driven owners think it's them and not the game. But like every single league and every single sport and every single team, there's always an organization that on paper they're the best, but they have so much drama behind the scenes that drama will eventually catch up and affect what's on the field. And kind of seen that last week against San Antonio. But we're good friends with Manas, Jeff Levesque, and the ownership group before of Albany, and we've heard their side of the story, and we've heard what's going on in the NAL. It's just a lot of noise in the background. There's a lot of stuff that you see hitting the newswire that's complete and accurate. Me and Zach always talk about off scenes. The loudest people are usually the ones that don't have the information. But overall, I think it's good for Albany because now they get a pocketbook that's deep. Mike Porter had a great organization, great company, and he's still involved in the city with community relations and the foundation. I just think, honestly, it was just time for Mike to go. I think he was just done owning the team. But now Albany went from an ownership that's not going to be always in your face to an ownership in Antonio Brown that is very polarizing. That could be good, bad, or indifferent. That's fighting for fire, but hopefully sometimes you want to hit a home run, and other times it can burn in flames. So, like you guys, I'm just sitting back and watching it because A, sometimes it's pretty hilarious what comes out of Albany, and then B, it's kind of entertaining that I don't have to be involved with it. Sometimes I'm like, okay, let's see how it goes. But overall, Albany's in good condition right now. It's just there's a lot of noise in the back. They have a good football team. I think they're going to rebound this week good against Carolina. But yeah, when you have a guy like Antonio Brown and the history that the AFL had back in the past with the major owners or big-time owners, I've seen this before. It's the same charade. So let's just hopefully this time it works.
That's completely fair. Ducon, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this. We spoke about the Manas move. We have not spoken about the Cora move and the move to jettison Levesque, and there were some other members of the team that left as well. You guys would know better than I would. What was your thoughts on this situation?
Well, initially I was upset. Jim had touched on quite a bit of things I haven't thought of, and I appreciate his assessment very much. Yeah, in a lot of ways, I want to sit back, pull out a bowl of popcorn, and just kind of watch what happens. Initially, I was upset because Tom Manas is a great friend of mine, and I just felt gutted for him, and so I got a little emotional about it, you might say, and probably shouldn't have. He's a great guy. He's going to get some good opportunities, but at the same time, I'm excited for Damon Ware. I like Damon Ware a lot, and I like that he comes in as interim head coach, and you know, he's got such a talented roster, and so far it looks like a really good product on the field. The reason I say that is you know, I don't want to take away from what San Antonio did. They're a great football team, and they're all about timing. Coming down to the wire there, the way that they finish games has been impressive. They did it in Jacksonville the week before. I'm with Jim. I think that Albany rebounds this week. As far as, like, you know, the exit of Mike Quarta, Jeff Levesque, and them, I feel gutted for them. I think there's some stuff there that I'm just not privy to and don't want to comment on much because of it. But I like those guys. I've always liked them, and feel like that there was something behind the scenes that I just don't understand. But last, I want to mention that I think it's really hilarious that you're like, hey, let's bring in Jim because we can't pronounce his last name. But it's
sorry.
Meunier,
happens all the
right?
time. Meunier.
Meunier. Okay.
To be fair,
Happens
I did not announce Omar with his last name either. So
Okay.
Just saying.
Okay. Good deal.
I think I did with Jeff. So you do have a point there. You do have a point. You're 100% right. I should have asked him his last name pronunciation before we came on.
No,
that is a mistake on my part.
I love it. Everybody knows Jim, but nobody dares pronounce his last name.
You know, it's slightly out of respect, right?
Well, it's common because all the announcers in the league, when they did on the official league podcast, Zach and Jim with Zach and Jim and Inside the Walls, they always try and pronounce their last names, and they stop and they just say, "Oh, from Inside the Walls." It's comical when you hear all the announcers on these broadcasts try to pronounce our names, so they just go straight to our name of the podcast, and we're used to it.
That's see, so he's used to it. But I apologize. I should have totally asked you beforehand.
I love it.
So anyway, San Antonio is undefeated. Obviously, we've seen some interesting situations develop with them, with the Bain move and him ending up in the IFL. Are you guys surprised to see San Antonio undefeated, or is this right where you expected them to be at this point in the season?
Surprised that they're 3-0?
Yeah.
No, not really. Me and Zach previewed this whole the offseason how they are developing or putting together a great squad. They were a team that we knew can go toe to toe with Albany and Jacksonville. The issue that everyone brings up about San Antonio is the ownership. That's the only thing. They go, "What's the deal with the ownership?" I'm like, that is the past. That's last year. Talk about this year. San Antonio is not a surprise. We knew they were going to be here. We discussed this on our last show about San Antonio. They went to Albany last week and they survived the storm. They went to Jacksonville 2 weeks ago and they survived the storm. That San Antonio team last year would have done that. They would have, stayed close in the game and would have got their doors blown off in the second half. But that tells you what type of team they are with Kyle Rashad, with Phil Barnett, with Justin Alexander and filling up at the end, and of course Arvell Nelson, who played basically, I think, his best game of the year last week. He made one early mistake early in the game, and then just matched Sam Castronova possession by possession, and then, of course, made the big time throw at the end of the game to Kyle Rashad. But one of the key things that we mentioned on our Tuesday show is that Arvell Nelson is the one that notified the referees about the jack out of the box the whole entire game. And that became a big issue at the end of the game against against Albany. That was really the key factor in the game. But San Antonio's 3-0. They're good. Unlike Albany and Jacksonville, San Antonio plays 12 games. So only got 9 games left. And they're the only team in the NAL that has a bye right before the beginning of the playoffs. So they can treat it like the NFL. They clinch a playoff spot. They got a bye week before the postseason so they can get healthy. But they're off this week, so it's time for them to get healthy. But it's no surprise. But they are playing fire with fire. They needed a 2-point conversion the first week to stop Carolina. They needed a missed extra point against Jacksonville. And they needed the last-second touchdown against Albany. They could very easily be 0-3, and they can very easily 2-1. But again, when you have a 0 at the end of your column, you're having a good start of the year. And they're on top of the league right now. We've seen this before with past teams. We've seen it with Carolina last year, where they went on 5-0 to start the season, and then as the season progressed, teams caught up with them and eventually surpassed them at the wrong time of the year, which is the championship game. But there's an experience on that San Antonio squad that has enough, in my opinion, that they'll be here throughout the whole year and they'll be consistently in the top tier, or the term that I like to say, they're going to be above the muck. San Antonio and Albany Jacksonville and Albany are, in my opinion, above the muck, and will stay there throughout the year.
Absolutely. I would completely agree. I mean, while I am surprised that they've won all the games they have, like you said, I don't want to say fluky, but they've needed a little bit of help to get there. So I guess that's why I'm surprised to see them 3-0, because none of them have been decisive wins per se. It's just been wins. So I mean,
they've been making the plays they need to do to win football games.
100%. 100%. Ducon, what are your thoughts on this? Are you surprised at all, or is it just, Arvell Nelson's the man?
I'm actually very surprised, and here's why. First of all, it's so rare to see a 3-0 team with a +4 point margin. That's extremely, extremely rare, and I think Jim nailed it on the head. They could be 0-3, they could be 1-2, 2-1, but they're 3-0. And what surprises me is who their opponents were and where they were playing. It's tough to go into the Shark Tank and win. It's tough to go up to Albany and win. And they've done both back-to-back weeks. And the reason why it surprises me is because they look like a playoff team right now. When it comes to the playoffs, you're always in dogfights. It always comes down to that last play. And And what they're doing is they're creating a culture of finishing games, which is huge for them. Because when you get into those playoffs, if you haven't learned how to finish games, then you're out, you're done. And so I'm very, very impressed with how they've finished games. And I have to tip my hat to Fred Shaw because he's really good at motivating those players. And not to take anything away from their personal motivation, he's just really good. And he understands the game. In the NAL, we have true arena football now with the rebound nets and Ironman football. And Fred Shaw understands that game just as well as anybody. And I think that he's utilizing his expertise very well so far. But they're going to be figured out. Jim mentioned them staying healthy. We'll see if they can stay healthy. But Jacksonville and Albany are both up there as well. Anytime any of those teams are playing each other, it's anybody's game.
I agree. One thing that a lot of people, when we get people that message us on our Discord page, including Sam, always ask about what's going on in San Antonio. How are they doing this? One of the key things I've noticed over the last 3 weeks is Fred Shaw's excellent execution in 1 minute scenarios. He has found a way to just eat the clock in his team's favor, not making stupid play calls where, I'm going to just throw it down the field for 60 yards for a touchdown, or you can't do 60 yards, it's a 50-yard field, or 40-yard touchdown, and waste 12 seconds to give the opposing team the ball. He's learned, especially last week against both end of the half and in the game against Albany, he sat on the football. And to win football games, close football games in the arena, you have to learn how to sit on the football. And Fred Shaw has done that, executed it, and they're 3-0 for a reason. But again, fighting fire, we're fire. Right now they're 3-0. We can come back here in 6 weeks and be saying, what happened to San Antonio? They're 3-3. It's because they're not winning these close games; they're losing these close games. So it's early in the season, but for San Antonio 3-0 with 2 wins against possibly the 2 hostile environments in the league, and one of them's against the defending champions, they put their place of putting the league on notice about being a contender come August.
Absolutely. I would agree. I had one other topic that just came to mind. I personally was very surprised by Connor Blount's performance so far. I honestly didn't know much about him prior to him signing with Jacksonville. So maybe you guys knew a little bit more. Jim, did you see this coming? Was it a surprise to you? I mean, it seems like he's one of the top players in the league at quarterback right now.
Right now, based on stats, he leads the league in passing yards, touchdowns, rushing yards, pass efficiency, and completion rate in the league. That's incredible for the first 3 weeks. And usually in arena football, it's very hard for quarterbacks to adjust from the outdoor game to the indoor game. We had Mason Espinoza, who breaks down our weekly games on rebound, said he can tell that it clicked for him. Once quarterbacks, that clicks in their head, they can tear up anything in arena football. We saw that with Sam Castronova last year, how he was night and day compared to what Sam Castronova was in Carolina. Malik Henry is starting to show that in Carolina right now from what he was in Jacksonville and now. And, of course, King Cato, a complete 180 from Orlando to Fayetteville right now, which he is healthy, which he is playing tonight in Fayetteville in the West Texas game. So that's a big deal for Fayetteville. But for Connor, with my connections with the Jacksonville Sharks, he's been in the fold for the Sharks for a long time to get in. Gibson really liked him. Gibson brought in a couple of quarterbacks, but Connor was the one guy he wanted. He played a couple. He played at Oregon State. He had a couple starts with Oregon State back in the day. He has if you watch the game, he has a great passing mindset. He can put the ball in the right place, good placement, good touch on the ball. One thing that he's doing right now, he's not making mistakes. He got 2 interceptions in the first game against West Texas, and ever since then, he's been pretty perfect. And this week, they're taking on an Orlando Predators team that's banged up. Lonnie Outlaw is gone out, so their Jack linebacker is out. So it's a big deal for Orlando because they need guys like Josh Jenkins and Clarence Williams to step up. If not, Jacksonville is going to feast on them here on Sunday afternoon in the Shark Tank. But for Connor, it's a great for a lot of Sharks fans. Again, Ducon will understand this. Jacksonville is very few teams are like Jacksonville. You can mention maybe Arizona, the Rattlers. If the quarterback play is not to Arizona or Jacksonville standards, the fan bases will revolt. Like, we need somebody in here to do stuff. And Connor's come in right here. Gibson has taught him well. He is honestly, he's adapted. The game's clicked for him, and you could tell in the game against Fayetteville, Gibson opened up the playbook for Connor, and Connor was torching Fayetteville's defense. Right now, if you would have told me who would be the MVP of the league, Connor would be one of the top 3 candidates for that position. Arville would be there, and Darius Prince would be up there as well. And Connor would be up there. The stats are there. One thing that's a blemish on Connor right now is the one loss to San Antonio, but that loss wasn't on him. He got the team in scoring position, and of course, extra point was missed. So a lot of the quarterbacks we talk to, let's say they don't like to have the game come down to a kicker. They want to take control of the game themselves. So maybe that's competitive mindset for all the quarterbacks we talk to. But yeah, Connor is a very impressive 3 weeks. But Jacksonville has 11 more games this season. So if he's like this in week 14, then Jacksonville could very well be a threat in August in the postseason to play, because that's what's been lingering in Jacksonville the last couple of years, is consistent quarterback play.
100%. And I like how you mentioned that they've kind of had a couple different quarterbacks, including Ed Crouch that we spoke about before. So, Ducon, what are your thoughts on Connor Blount's performance so far? And is he the odds-on favorite to win the MVP currently?
I agree with everything that Jim just mentioned. I watched Connor in the first half at West Texas, and my first thought was, I don't know if this is going to work out. But he did. He started to click in that second half, and he has not looked back since. I watched a little bit of the Fayetteville game this last week, and I was just blown away because, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but he hasn't played arena football before this, right?
3-game experience.
That right there is what's impressing me. And I did watch your show earlier where Mason specifically mentioned that he noticed it clicked. It clicked with Connor. And there were shades I saw in Connor that reminded me of Espinosa. He just understands the game. It seems like he's learned it so fast. And for somebody to learn it that fast in 3 games makes the ceiling so high. I mean, if he can avoid turning the ball over, or if he turns the ball over and it just shakes it off well without letting it affect him, I think he is the front runner for the MVP, and I think he will.
And another wild card for the Sharks is Solomon, Cameron Solomon. He is he's come out of nowhere and has stepped up his game after Taron Townsend went out with an injury, and McLean went out with an injury. Ever since then, Solomon has been like the 1A. And of course, Jordan Smith is popping in, and Jensen Shoshak is coming out of nowhere. But again, they say quarterbacks make receivers, or do receivers make quarterbacks? Right now, it looks like Connor and Solomon are the 2 connections that are making Jacksonville right now playing like Jacksonville of old. And that's one thing for me as a fan I enjoy watching.
Of course. Of course.
I love that. That's a great point. I was surprised. Like I said, I didn't know a whole lot about Connor Blount before the season. I noticed that he was signed. It's on me that I didn't do my research as soon as he was signed, to be completely honest. But to see his performance has been extremely encouraging. Him and Anthony Russo, I know it's 2 different leagues, but they've both surprised me quite a bit. Making that transition to indoor football or arena football very quickly and making it look very fluid, which is not easy to do. And, I've heard several quarterbacks come on this channel and talk about the fact that it's so much more sped up. You have pressure in your face right away. If you don't get the ball off immediately, you have maybe 1 to 2 seconds and you're getting hit. And it's a different game. So, I mean, to see these guys perform so well, this early in their careers is very encouraging. I hope they both find success and get back where they want to be, which is, of course, outdoors, unfortunately. But it'll be interesting to see how these guys can perform going forward. Like you said, there's still a long season ahead of us. There's still plenty of time for them to show some chinks in their armor. Moving on to the next subject, which is, of course, the attendance issues in Fayetteville. The commissioner, Chris Siegfried, was at the game this past weekend, correct? And even he had some things to say about it. He wants some more support out of Fayetteville. So this is not a spot to criticize the league because it's a new market. It's one of those things that you have to build fan anticipation. So what are some ways that we could see them having more success in Fayetteville? Jim, do you have any suggestions for the league?
Well, every arena team has a different way of presenting their product. In Jacksonville, we're all over the airways and commercials on TV, and you see signs all over town. And plus, the Jacksonville brand is big here in Jacksonville. Everyone knows who the Sharks are. Same up in Albany. Everyone knows who the Empire are. Fayetteville is a new franchise. They're roughly, I think, 9 months old. It takes a while. From what I've noticed in a lot of sports, it takes up to a year to a year and a half for that name to finally get into the community and spread. It's the first game. We have good relationships with the coaches and the owners in Fayetteville, and they are doing their darnest to get fans in this arena. Sometimes it's almost to a point where you rather take the hit with the tickets, meaning giving away a bunch of free tickets to colleges, community colleges, military bases, whatever, to get butts in the seats first, then sell them on the product. That we keep preaching that on this show, on every league, every team. Give away free tickets to community colleges, to schools, to military bases, to community centers. Get them in the arena, and if you can get just 5% of that people that coming in, you have a returning product and returning value of future tickets. We saw that in Albany last year. Their attendance suffered early, and then they started reaching out to the community. And as the season progressed, the attendance went up. Orlando's a great example of that. Their first game last year, they only had like 2,000 fans, and their last game of the regular season, after going 2-10, that last year, or they're up 2-10, I think 2-10, 2-8 at the time. Their last home game, they had 8,000 fans, so it progressed, went up. And their first home game, they had like 7,800 this year. So it different markets, you need to treat different ways. In Fayetteville, there's colleges, there's Fort Bragg that's right there. And from the people we've talked to, the ownership group, they've been going out trying their best. They've been doing what we've suggested to them, and it's almost a wait and see. Keep putting the product on the field. Keep presenting the product, because their broadcast is perfect. It's a great. They're great product that they have on YouTube. They can sell it. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, Chris Sixfree did make some comments in the game, but still, it was good. In my opinion, we've covered this league. You guys covered the other two leagues in the arena game. The teams that are successful in attendance, and the teams that struggle with attendance. Sometimes it never changes. Sometimes there is changes, and it's just a whim. That's it. But overall, Fayetteville, in my opinion, it's their first home game. They still have 6 more home games, so I start worrying about teams' attendance and their presentation of their community about the 4th or 5th home game. But right now, it's the first home game. There was jokes out there. There was more Sharks fans in the building than there was Fayetteville fans. But then again, Shark fans do travel, especially if it's within 6 hours of Jacksonville. You should see the contingent that goes down to Orlando every year. So it's about 100, 200 people that go down there. So I'm not worried yet, but what we've suggested to them, they're doing. They're starting to get into the community, especially Fort Bragg. That's literally in Fayetteville. But I'm not worried. A lot of it. This game is so, I can't say picky, but it's so weird because you can have the greatest team in the league, and if you don't broadcast or present it to your community that it is, no one will show. A lot of owners in all the leagues, just not this league, think that their football team is the Arizona Rattlers or the Iowa Barnstormers or the Jacksonville Sharks, where these are already founded teams for years, just not 2 years, for 15 to 20 to 35 years. They're already brands. You can't have that mentality 3 games into your existence. You have to keep building that. But attendance is an issue for Fayetteville at this moment. But overall, there's been the normal attendance in every single NAL game is about what we expected so far this season. With Albany, Jacksonville, and Albany, Jacksonville, Orlando exceeding expectations with the attendance right now.
100%. Great takes on all fronts. Ducon, what are your thoughts on the attendance in Fayetteville, and do you have any suggestions that they haven't attempted already?
Jim's suggestions are flat out phenomenal. I love them. I want to just date back to last year with San Antonio's situation. Their first game, they had 4, maybe 500 fans, and by the end of the season, they were eclipsing 4,000 fairly consistently, which was an incredible jump. So, and I don't know if this has been suggested to the Fayetteville front office, but if they were to contact San Antonio and follow that blueprint, I think that would help. San Antonio had the Smoke and Guns podcast where every week they would talk about it, and I think that helped generate some interest and intrigue. Jim's suggestions were phenomenal, but one thing that we can do on our front is just volunteer to help the team out a little bit in maybe finding an individual who can cover Fayetteville and have Fayetteville have a weekly show, talk about them a little bit. And one of the things that Fayetteville reminds me of right now was a little bit like the Jersey Flight from a couple of years ago. And that was, they had an owner up there. They had a huge arena they were renting out, and that owner was trying to run everything by himself. I'm not saying that's what Fayetteville is doing, but, because they're new, and Jim mentioned this, they're only 9 months old. They don't have all the help that they need right now to really get the word out. But we can reach out to local radio shows and say, hey, is it okay if we talk about this team on your radio? And newspapers, reach out to them and say, hey, can we talk about doing a piece on the Fayetteville Mustangs? It's a very entertaining venue for the local to come to, and get the word out that it's available and it's a fun time. It's a great place to bring the family. There's things that we can do on our end to help that community out, to put butts in the seats.
That's a great point. So let's just go ahead and throw it out there. If anybody's interested in running a Fayetteville podcast, contact me. We'll see what we can arrange and see if we can get it out to the people, and hopefully do our part to help the Fayetteville Mustangs continue to exist and bring fans great football. Because at the end of the day, I mean, the National Arena League is a great product. It's different than the IFL. It's different than the CIF. And currently, it doesn't have another competitor at its level. So I think that, there's something to be said about their style of football. It's the style of football that honestly made most of us arena football fans to begin with. Let's be honest. Most of us grew up with the AFL. I remember my first game back in like 2005, 2004, something like that. I'll never forget it. It's the reason why I'm an alternative football fan. But Ducon, I know you got to get out of here. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day. I hope everything goes well for you.
Guys, thank you, Sam. Good to see you, Jim. Take care.
Absolutely. Once again, that's Ducon with Arena Football Statement. Check out his YouTube channel, ZO Productions, on YouTube, and then also Arena Football Statement on Facebook. Jim, we got one more topic at hand real quick. What is the most recent and up-to-date information that you have on the Arena Football League as far as where teams will land and the big things we want to know?
The most recent information I know is the information you know.
Gotcha.
I really, honestly, we know people who are associated with the AFL, but how me and Zach are so busy right now with the NAL, we can't really focus on what's going on. So every time you see someone post something on the AFL on social media, that's when we know. We have 7 teams that we're paying attention to in our league, and we're midway through our season. So when we have extra time, as everyone knows, if you watch Inside the Walls, Zach does another podcast called the USFL podcast. So he has 2 leagues that he's covering. We're busy, but honestly, for me, they're making noise, but until something drops, I'm still consider them as a product that's just making noise and not any found evidence. But again, I'm too focused on the National Arena League right now. That's you can say that's my bread and butter. You come to me with all the NAL stuff, I can give you all the answers I can. But again, in this arena again, there's always a league that pops up. We have like the AAL popped up a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago. Again, there's supposed to be like another league trying to jump next year too. So there's so many of these alt football organizations, but my focus is the National Arena League. But again, if it something comes in the future that intrigues my interest, you definitely will know about it.
Definitely.
I'll definitely make a statement about it. But right now, it's week 4 for me in the NAL, so I got 3 games to get ready for this weekend. So yeah, it's fun. More arena football is the better. But right now, I'm focused on my hometown team and Sharks and the 7 organizations in the NAL. So yeah.
Completely fair. Completely fair. I definitely have not heard a whole lot recently. Again, I'm much in the same situation as you. I'm pretty caught up in everything going on with the XFL and the USFL, the IFL, CIF, all these different leagues. To be completely honest, I do not cover or follow the NAL extremely closely. I do watch the games, but that's about the extent of it. So anybody who likes the NAL, if you're into arena football a little bit more than the IFL or the CIF, definitely want to check out Inside the Walls podcast. There is no better source of information, no better source for interviews. Basically, you guys are the go-to source for the National Arena League, and not only because you're the official show, because you guys are just that good at what you do. And I mean that with the most respect I could possibly give you. As you know, I'm a big fan of Zach, who's been on this channel once before as well. So I definitely appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about the National Arena League with us, because quite honestly, you would do it in a much better manner than I ever could. So thank you again.
It's fun. With the drama, without the drama, it's fun covering this league. And it's one thing about what you do here and what Ducon does and what everyone else who covers this league is that these players are athletes. These players are individuals that want to get back to the 100-yard game. So me and Zach have brought this mentality of these players deserve the same coverage and respect like the NFL players do. And that's why we create Inside the Walls. 100th episode is coming out this week. It's going to be NL game day is for week 5. But we're having trying to get something special, a returning guest that possibly has connections with a outdoor league right now, who was a NAL player. So 100 episodes in, and we're 3 weeks into the season, entering week 4. A lot of football left to be played here. But again, thank you, sir, for allowing me to be on here. Of course, can I do a little plug here about if you want more information, great community, our Discord page. I think Shady will have the link if he can.
Absolutely.
Join us. Good chatter. There's a lot of people in there, a lot of announcers of the NAL in there, myself, Zach. We give up-to-date information there. Of course, every Tuesday, NAL Rebound, every Friday, 10 a.m., NAL Game Day to get you ready for upcoming week action in the National Arena League.
Definitely. I'm glad that you plugged the Discord. I meant to do that as well. Honestly, the best source for arena football information that you will find. That community is on top of it. They catch every little detail about every little arena league coming out. It's crazy, honestly. You guys are onto things in that Discord server a lot quicker than most people, it seems. So, huge shout out to everybody that's in that community. Huge shout out to you guys for what you do. And thank you so much for your time today. It was an awesome moment speaking with you. And then I hope we can have you on again in the future.
No problem. And I'm more welcome to join. This is what I do. I love covering this sport. But yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and I'll catch you next time.
You too.
So once again, guys, that is Jim Meunier with the Inside the Walls podcast. If you have not checked out his channel, make sure you go follow them. Again, they've got the Discord server, Inside the Walls. I will make sure to put that in the description of this video right after I get off here. They've also got the Twitter page, Inside the Walls, and then they've also got the YouTube channel. So make sure you go follow them, subscribe on all their different sources for their information, because honestly, I meant every word I said. They are the best source for National Arena League information, interviews, recaps, basically everything you could possibly want and more from the National Arena League. My guy Chris tuning in, he says 100, because honestly, he knows it's true too. Jim and Zach are as good as it gets. I was super lucky to have Jim on. I've had Zach on in the past. Go check out that episode. We discussed everything we knew about the AFL coming forward. And we also discussed the National Arena League. Like I said, I don't really cover the National Arena League, so I really, really lean on these guys that know the league better than I do to have them come on and discuss it. So it's a huge pleasure to have people like Jim on, Zach, Ryan McCarthy, and then so many other guys who have come on to assist us with this show. It's been a pleasure. Big Boy Sports in episode 1 as well. Sorry, I don't want to leave him out of here. Thank you to Arena Football Statement. Thank you to Omar. Thank you to Jeff. I really appreciate everybody who came on and talked to us today. This show is going to be happening every 2 weeks around this time. I know it's early. I know, join us. There's a reason why we do this so early. We all have kids. We all have prior arrangements. But we also want to make sure that we're bringing you guys all the latest information and as well as analyzing all the latest news. So I hope you guys enjoy the show. If you did, make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube on Shady Sports Network. If you do not see the banner below me at 1,000 subscribers, if we hit that by the IFL Championship game, one lucky fan will win gear from the league or their team of their choice. So if you're a Frisco Fighters fan, even if they're not in the championship game and you would like to get some gear from them, that will happen. So, I mean, it's only going to be one subscriber. So here's how it works. The more active you are on our YouTube channel, the more you comment, the more you like videos, the more you share stuff, the more you're interacting, the more likely you are to win. So if you're commenting on every video we've got, if you're liking every video we got, you are highly likely to win. If you'd like to talk a little bit more about our giveaways, you can message me. You can also message some of the winners in the past. You know, Lauren Gomez, big supporter of this channel. She won the first one, and it's because she is constantly watching and commenting. So we need you guys' help to continue growing. And in order to do that, we wanted to give you guys a little bit of emphasis and a little bit of a reason to do so. So if you have not done so already, I highly encourage you to share this with your friends. If you know any arena or indoor football fans, tell them to check us out. If they're fans of the XFL or USFL, also check us out because we cover those leagues as well. And we'll have NFL coverage as well. So if you're a fan of football in general, this is the channel for you. We were always going to have rotating analysts with different opinions, different voices. It's never just going to be any one person. So if you're sick of hearing my voice, don't worry. There's plenty more voices on this channel. With that, I'm going to leave you guys with a quick commercial from one of our sponsors, Upside. And I'm going to bid you adieu. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy all the football coming at you. And once again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and make sure you comment your thoughts below. Check out our official sponsor, the Upside app, available free to Android or Apple users. Download Upside using our code SAM363682 to get an extra cashback bonus on your first purchase. Upside is an app that will pay you cash back for purchases you are likely already making. Whether it's filling up your tank, taking the family out to eat, or buying groceries, Upside is working to bring you more widespread offers each day. Not only will we both receive a one-time bonus for your initial sign-up and first purchase, after each gas purchase after that, Shady Sports Network will receive a small referral bonus as well. The same can be said for any user who refers another user. As if that wasn't enough, Upside will actually pay you a bonus for the people your referrals have referred to the app as well. With so many ways to earn cash back each and every day, what are you waiting for? Download Upside today. Use our code SAM363682. That's SAM363682 to get cash back and help support Shady Sports Network today. Now, back to the original programming. Please like, comment, and subscribe to help us continue growing